Welcome to the Libido Lounge, where we focus on all things love, lust, and libido. We believe that fabulous sex is important to health as exercise and good food. Dr. Diane here, your Libido Doc. In this episode, we're going to be exploring what diet is best to support your libido and support your hormone levels. And we're going to dispel some of the myths around oysters and aphrodisiacs and more. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm so excited about this episode because what you eat dramatically impacts your libido, and what you choose to put in your body every day can make a huge difference on your sex drive. And I'm excited about this episode because it's so common that in the clients I work with that they want this like one diet, right? What is like the most aphrodisiac filled diet that's going to just turn on their engine and get them all juiced up and ready for sex. And the fact of the matter is that does not exist. And this is a really important thing. Now, what does exist is the diet that is right for you. So the difference here is there's not like this one, hey, eat this perfect way diet to have the best sex, right? That doesn't exist. But what actually does exist is learning your body and learning some common things to think about. So when we are learning your body and how to really support the dietary choices that are going to best promote a healthy sex drive, we got to get inflammatory foods out. And it's so common that I see in the people that I work with, they'll come in and they'll be inflamed due to parasites or food or toxic metals or something else. And their sex drive's in the garbage. Because when you're inflamed, you don't feel good. You're not producing your hormones correctly. Your brain might be inflamed, so it's not sending out the chemical messengers. And the sex drive it's just normal to fall when you're in an inflammatory state. So one of the biggest things to start with is to make sure you are not eating things that are inflaming you. So the easiest thing to do in this specific example is to get yourself tested. I'm going to give you a direct link for food reactivity testing in the show notes. So make sure you look for that. That's going to be really important. And you can sometimes, for many people, you can look at, food types of testing and say, okay, well, you can try this by elimination, right? So you can try like, okay, eliminating a lot of food from the diet, see how it feels when you add them back in. And that's a cheaper way to test. It also can be fairly accurate. It's not perfect. But for a lot of people, that's very laborious, and it can take a lot of time and effort and energy. And you have to really pay attention that it's, all these different foods aren't creeping in at all in order for reliable results. So it's oftentimes easier to just get tested. So if you're interested in getting food reactivity tested, definitely check out the link to do so in the show notes. By food reactivity, I mean looking for allergies as well as sensitivities. These are different ways food will inflame you and impact your sex drive. So that's going to be really important as well. So you want to, look for those food reactivities. Getting those foods out are going to be key. And this is why it is so unique, because you want to design your diet for your libido around what foods you're going to feel great on. And that's going to be different from person to person depending upon what you react to. So that's a really important thing to consider, is just getting those things out. Now, if you don't want to spend the time and the energy and the money to get food tested, some things to definitely consider that bother a lot of people. Gluten bothers a lot of people and inflames a lot of people. Dairy, corn, soy, and sugar. Those are the top 5 things to consider for most people. You can also, make sure that you're doing things like you're getting industrial seed oils out. So things like sunflower and safflower and peanut and canola. Too many of those types of oils can be very inflammatory to the body, and they can also throw off the hormonal system. So you want to be very careful about not using a lot of those kind of oils when we're really balancing our libido. You want to focus on good quality butters, organic butters, and ghee and coconut oil and avocado oil and olive oil and grapeseed oil. All of these types of oils are much less inflammatory to the body and promote a healthier sex drive. So what about aphrodisiacs, right? So what about, oysters are a classic aphrodisiac, right? That they're always listed as a huge aphrodisiac. So I'm going to ask everybody that's listening how you feel about oysters. Do you get excited when you get oysters? Do you feel like excited to eat an oyster? Do you get, turned on about the slipperiness when they go down your throat? Like, Some people might get like, I know people that are really excited to eat oysters and love everything about them. And other people hate oysters. So pleasure and sex is about feeling and sensation. So if there's a food that brings a certain sensation that is like not very enjoyable, even if it's a classic aphrodisiac, I would not personally call that a unique aphrodisiac for you. Oysters have zinc in them. We need zinc to make testosterone, and we actually see in research that when zinc is given in high enough amounts, you always want to be careful to not go too high, that testosterone levels oftentimes raise. Testosterone for both men and women is important for a healthy libido. So if you can follow this chain here, right, we have oysters, they have zinc, they promote testosterone. Testosterone is good for libido. So you can see how oysters are necessary for a healthy sex drive, right? Or not necessary, or if oysters are, that was a bad misspeak. Oysters are oftentimes utilized as an aphrodisiac because of the zinc to help a healthy sex drive. Now, when we're really talking about aphrodisiacs, from a food standpoint, I really feel like we need to take a step back and almost put these kind of conversations in two categories. One, we want to eat foods that are going to support progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone, right? Because these hormones are really necessary for a healthy sex drive, especially estrogen and testosterone. So we want to make sure like the foods we're choosing have the nutrients in them to support those hormones. We could consider those aphrodisiacs. We also want to consider from an aphrodisiac standpoint, what foods are going to bring us so much pleasure, right? Do you like certain textures of food? Right? Do you like certain tastes? Are you a salty person or a bitter person or a sweet person? What makes you enjoy food the most? What feels the best in your body? What are you going to finish eating and being like, wow, I have a ton of energy, right? So if chocolate cake, for example, feels really good when you're eating it, but you get done with chocolate cake and you're like, I think I'm ready for a nap because I'm bloated and full, probably not the best pre-sex food. So rather than looking online and saying, hey, let me read about the list of foods that are aphrodisiacs, a better approach is to understand that aphrodisiac foods really are about the uniqueness of how foods turn you on, of how they support the hormones, and how you're going to feel after consuming them. If you eat something and you feel, satisfied and it was enjoyable and it was super pleasurable and you enjoyed the taste and the texture, but afterwards you feel energized and you don't feel bloated, you still feel sexy in your body, I would say that food is an aphrodisiac for you, right? Because it's all about how you feel. And that thing that can happen, especially as with people age, what can happen is like sex, like right before the lights go out is like the worst time from a standpoint of having energy, right? So the same thing is true with food. Like food that are aphrodisiacs are going to be food that are going to you're going to eat and you're going to feel energized and you're going to feel like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go jump my partner's bones, right? I'm ready to do this. I feel so alive in my body. Like those are the foods that are going to be aphrodisiacs for you. So I want to help you get away from like looking up any of these foods online and being like, oh, maybe I should eat more oysters to help my sex drive. How do you feel when you eat oysters? You feel amazing and you feel like you love them and you love the taste. And like after you eat them, you're like, that was amazing. And you feel super excited and you feel super energized and you don't feel bloated. I would say that's a good aphrodisiac. But other things you can do, for example, like other things you can do for testosterone, you can take zinc and magnesium and vitamin D. You can use grapeseed as a oil or as a supplement. Red wine, it has been shown to increase testosterone. Red wine you have to be a little bit careful with because it can also lower estrogen. And both testosterone and estrogen are necessary for a proper sex drive in both men and women. So you can definitely consider, red wine. And oftentimes with wine, if you're using wine as an aphrodisiac, if you feel great after wine, if you love the experience of it, it's really about that proper amount, right? It's like, where is that amount that's like going to give you energy and not make you tired? Anything that's going to make you tired should be like X from the aphrodisiac. Tired and bloated are not aphrodisiacs. So other herbs you can really consider, you can consider things like ginseng, saw palmetto, tribulus are all herbs that have been shown to support testosterone. Again, testosterone is such an important component of this. Also, look, I'm going to put research in the show notes. So some of these things I am pulling straight out of research. I'll put, some research articles in the show notes for you so you can see where I'm getting this from. But another big thing that I wanted to bring up in this food component is this concept of keto. So ketosis or a keto diet is when it's a high fat, very low carb diet for those of you that don't know. And it's become very popular in the health space. And so a lot of you listening have probably heard about the keto diet. There's a lot of people that will say, hey, this is the best diet for like brain health and weight loss. And it can help some people with those things some of the time. We also see that keto can sometimes make the thyroid not work as well. Well, we need our thyroid working for weight maintenance as well as for a healthy sex drive. And because keto is so low carbs and carbs do support thyroid functioning, we do want to make sure that we have enough carbs to actually support the thyroid. And this is especially true in women. I've seen this thing happen when women go keto, where maybe they lose a little bit of weight or they don't lose any at all. But then all of a sudden they come off of keto and there's a ton of weight gain. Right? So women in particular, I find, need more carbs than men and don't have as easy of a time on a low carb diet. So I would be very careful if you're experimenting with some of these things. We got to be very careful. And I don't see women do very well on this. And because another thing that we see, there's a great book by Dr. Mindy Pelz called Fast Like a Girl. And I love this work and I love this doctor's work. She's super, super, super wise in the way she's actually looked at fasting and what we eat as far as nutrients in relationship of impacting these hormones that are related to our sex drive, estrogen and testosterone and progesterone. And what she actually shows in some of the book is that what's happening in the later half of a cycle for bleeding women, when you are really wanting your progesterone levels to be high, we really are seeing that, typically we want more carbs then. We don't want long fasts. At this part of the cycle, you really want to make sure you're getting that carbohydrate load in there, that if you do high fat diets at that point, it's probably not going to work very well. You're probably not going to have a lot of energy. You might gain weight. And so again, really these fad things that are happening that are really extreme oftentimes don't work for the masses. And they do work for some people and they do work really well for some people. But for some reason, when things work really well for some people, they get promoted as like, this is the way. And when it comes to the uniqueness of health and when it comes to the uniqueness of your sex drive, and what I'm interested in supporting you with is how to determine what is unique for you, how to improve your sex drive, because that's going to be different than your neighbors, than your friends, than your partners, etc. Everybody's sex drive and what's going to improve or slow the sex drive down is going to be different. So really be careful with some of those fad diets out there. They can work for some people. There's definitely reason to do them. But again, how you feel and if you are noticing your libido improve or not, that's what's most important. Another big thing I wanted to hugely mention here is there is so much to say about toxins and stress and sex drive. We see a dramatic relationship in research from toxins of all kinds on hormones. And this can be toxins from plastics, this can be pesticides, this can be herbicides, this can be toxic metals. There's a really great app called Yucca, Y-U-K-A. And I love this app because what you can do, you can put it on your phone and you can start scanning household products, cleaning products, makeup, beauty products to see the toxic level that is in your products. And one by one, you want to start replacing these because another thing we see is that toxins can negatively impact hormones. Remember, hormones are so related to sex drive. So we want to naturally do what we can to keep our hormones balanced and our sex drive really high. And the last thing I would say when it comes to food and nutrition here in this conversation is circulation, right? We want to make sure that you have a healthy blood pressure, not too low, not too much. And that's because for your erectile tissue, whether you're a woman or a man, for your erectile tissue to become engorge, which is necessary for you to feel extreme pleasure. You got to have blood flow to that area, right? So we really want to make sure that your blood flow is good. This involves you making sure your mineral balance, your electrolyte balance is good. Or herbs such as hawthorn can work really well here. Pomegranate juice has actually been shown in research to do amazing things for the heart and the circulatory system. And if we're talking about true aphrodisiac foods, I feel like pomegranates are so interesting. For some of you guys might not know what pomegranates look like, but they're this kind of purplish red fruit, and you cut into it and the juice is so red that you have to be careful because it'll actually stain your countertop, right? So you want to be very careful when you're cutting into these things. And if you actually just get it as a juice, it's just this gorgeous red color. And in my mind, it's like, from a standpoint of an aphrodisiac, it's like you can pour pomegranate juice in a wine glass and, it's almost the color of not quite as deep as a red wine, but it's just this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous color. And I look at that, and that it's a sensual color, and it's good for the circulation, and it tastes delicious. And it's like one of the few juices out there. There's not very many juices that I would promote because sugar content can be very high, but pomegranate, the research is just so strong on what it does for our body, that talk about an aphrodisiac food in my mind. That's something that in my mind is just such a great aphrodisiac food. Is feel good, circulation's going, it's gorgeous to drink, put it in a wine glass and it gets even more sexy and fun. And so, that's how I look at these sorts of things. And, another thing I would say here on food and aphrodisiacs it's really about presentation too, right? So I know a lot of you guys are super duper busy, and we have last episode, we talked about the concept of overwhelm and libido. So, on a day-to-day basis, I'm not suggesting that you plate your food like you're at a nice restaurant, but let's say you're cooking a really nice dinner for your partner, right? And you want to really take the time to have a really nice dinner and sit down and connect and all these things. Well, if you're thinking about aphrodisiac foods, the things you want to think about in prepping a dinner is what foods are going to be very palatable. What's going to be so delicious? What's going to be savory? That's going to make you want to slow down and savor every moment, right? What's going to help feel really good and energized after that meal, and not so full that it's well, I don't want to get naked now because I feel bloated, right? That's not very sexy for most of us. So you want to stay away from foods that are going to lead to that sort of feeling. What sort of foods, when I said savory, I'm also tuning into the fact that when we slow down, when we take a moment to appreciate the present, that alone can be an aphrodisiac, right? Because one of the things I talk a lot about with sexuality and with enjoying intimacy is really being in that present moment of bringing the mind so present so the mind's not wandering. So you're feeling every single touch and movement and caress and kiss and penetration of your lover, right? You're feeling every single ounce of everything that's happening in the sexual experience. And so part of how we practice that is we become more present in the other things in our life that we're doing. So if we're eating, and if you're eating something savory and you're doing it slowly and you're taking part of how you chew your food and how you taste your food and appreciate it, I would say you're actually eating that meal in an aphrodisiac, enticing type of way. So that's how I would think about food. That's how I would think about nutrients. There's some of those nutrients that I mentioned for hormones. You definitely want to make sure you're getting those nutrients into your diet through supplements or food. You can check out the show notes for some research here. And please do rate this. Please do rate my channel. It would be really, really helpful for me to reach more people. So I appreciate any time you take to rate this information. It also helps me develop content more and more that you want. And that's it for this show. As a friendly reminder, continue to stay sexy and feel classy. See you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well